Welcome. I'm Harmony Slater, your host of the Finding Harmony podcast. Over the past 20 years, I've taught thousands of yoga teachers and students to explore the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern everyday life, using mind-body practices to heal, awaken, and manifest their dreams from the inside out. This podcast is a sanctuary for those feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges. Are you ready to jump in and discover how these challenges aren't actually in the way, but are the way to finding harmony? Let's invite the magic back in. Hello, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm so happy you're here today because today we are meeting with a beautiful human being, a wonderful woman. She's so gifted, so intelligent. She is a psychologist, trauma therapist, as well as a yoga teacher. And we've known each other for several years. And in fact, we were traveling together back in February because we're both ambassadors for Yoga Gives Back and supporting the non-for-profit organizations in India that all of the funds we raise through Yoga Gives Back go to support. And so today we are meeting with my dear friend Anouk Prop, who is in the Netherlands. She's an amazing yoga teacher, and we have many, many points of intersection in our past. But today we're talking about trauma-informed yoga, as well as her work with Yoga Gives Back, her work with the orphans, working at the orphanage that Yoga Gives Back supports in India, and her journey to where she is now. And if you would like to support Yoga Gives Back in a little bit of a deeper way and a richer way, I would encourage you to donate to my fundraiser. I am offering a spiritual wellness workshop on June 16th. So that's coming up. Save the date, Sunday, June 16th. When you donate to my personal fundraising page, you will get an invitation to this very special spiritual wellness workshop that I'm offering. And I hope that you will love it. We're going to dive into meditation, chanting, some gentle asana practice, so some somatic body movement, as well as pranayama, of course, and some time for question and answer. So that will be coming up. It is a free class, essentially, a class by donation to Yoga Gives Back. All the funds will go to Yoga Gives Back. They go directly to this particular non-for-profit organization that I love, that I also happen to be a board member of. Full disclosure, I believe in their mission so strongly and have seen the amazing work that your money does in India itself. If you would like to dive deeper and talk to me about that, come into the Finding Harmony community and ask your questions. I would love to tell you more and share pictures, videos of how incredible these non-for-profit organizations are doing in India with the funds that you donate to Yoga Gives Back. So I'm so excited about this charity organization. I know Anouk is also just such a firm believer because she's worked with the non-for-profit organizations themselves through her connection with Yoga Gives Back. And we're going to tell you all about it today, as well as what yoga can do for those who really are struggling with difficult situations, have had traumatic events happening in their past. Some of these kids in India who come from very, very traumatic family backgrounds and situations, how yoga is helping to stabilize their nervous system and give them a new life, essentially. So I cannot wait for you to hear all of the wisdom and goodness that Anouk is going to share with you. So let's get going. Let's jump in. Hi, and welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm your host, Harmony, and I'm here with Russell K.
Good morning.
Good morning, Russell. So we're joined today by Anouk. Hello, Anouk. How are you?
Hi, Harmony. Hi, Russell. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
I'm very good, thank you.
Good. And you're coming in from the Netherlands. It's evening there.
Yeah, it's around 5 p.m., 5:15, and I just finished my work day.
Oh, beautiful. Well, I would love for you to tell everyone a little bit because maybe some people don't know what you do. And I mean, you're a yoga teacher, and of course, we met through yoga and also the non-for-profit Yoga Gives Back, but you have a whole other job, and it kind of also ties into yoga as well.
It sounds like you're a psychologist and trauma therapist. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm a psychologist and a trauma therapist. So I did my studies in psychology, and after that, when I finished my studies, I started to work at the university to do a PhD. And at that moment, I also started to get in touch with yoga because at my workplace at that time, it was being offered for employees to do some yoga during lunchtime.
Oh yeah.
And I thought that might be a good idea to join that class because I noticed that working as a PhD, you're constantly like in your head and it's very cognitive. And there is not so much a connection with the body. So what I usually did was like during the day, I was constantly busy in my head doing research, blah, blah, blah. And then after work, I went to the gym and did some physical exercises. But I noticed that I wanted to have some kind of integration of these things together to combine like body and mind. And so that's why I started these yoga classes. And in the beginning, I thought it was really boring.
What kind of yoga was it?
It was hatha yoga, very traditional hatha yoga,
Yeah.
but also with a very traditional teacher, so to say. And because I was used to more dynamic forms of exercise, this was really difficult for me in the beginning to be still and to notice and to observe what was happening in my body. But then after each class, I really started to feel more relaxed and also a calmer state of mind. And I thought, wow, so this if this works for me, this might also work for other people. Um, and um, and in the same time, I was also in the process of figuring out if a PhD was really something that I wanted to do, or because it was never my ambition to become a doctor. I'm more a practical oriented person, and to be in touch with people and in connection and to help them in that sense. So I made a decision to quit my PhD after 2.5 years, and everybody was very flabbergasted that I did this because it was such a great opportunity to do that, and how could I make that decision to quit? But for me, it was one of the best decisions that I made because it really brought me in touch with the things that I really love to do. It's working with people and not so much working with computers or working with books.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then so on one hand, I was getting more into the direction of the things that I really like to do, and then in the same time, I also started to notice like this yoga practice is really benefiting me in a good way, and I wanted to know more about it. So I went on a trip to India for a few weeks, and there I got in touch with the more dynamical forms of yoga, like Ashtanga yoga, and at that time power yoga.
Yeah. Where did you
So
go on your first trip to India?
different places. So started in Delhi, and then to Agra, of course, to see the Taj Mahal. Yeah, to Goa. I stayed a long time in Goa as well, and Rishikesh. Yeah,
Did you
so a lot
fall in love with it right away?
more like a tour. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Did you fall in love with it right away?
Yeah, because so what I really noticed is that there was no time to think anymore. Like in the Hatha yoga, there is still time to observe and to reflect, and it also gives you the opportunity to go back into your mind and to analyze things. But like especially with Ashtanga yoga, there was no time to think. You could only feel. And I noticed that in some poses, things were happening to me, like I'm starting to get emotional, or there were some like physical sensations that I never noticed before. And also after the practice, I also started to feel, on one hand, sometimes, like I said, more emotional, but sometimes also I felt more strength, more power, more in touch with my body itself. And then I really thought, like, okay, like I said before, if this is working for me like this could also work for other people, and then more in a therapeutical way. But in the Netherlands at that time, there were, yeah, yoga was still upcoming. So it was not like it is right now. Now it's like a hype. But at that time, yeah, there were not many yoga teachers or yoga studios, and especially not in Ashtanga yoga. So the yoga that was present at that moment was more the Hatha yoga and the very traditional yoga. And yeah, also for more for elderly people.
Yeah.
But
Like,
but
women in their 50s and 60s, and not so
In their
much.
unitards.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah, without judgment, but yeah. And
I
then I
when I
thought,
was
okay.
living in when I was living in California, a big part of my social network were the students of the Sophia University, which was at the time the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology. And many of the students actually were complaining about the getting a master's versus having a PhD, and the investment in a PhD versus just how practical it can be to find work with a master's degree. And it was interesting that you mentioned that. But on addition, it seemed like the focus of that institute was um, integrating mystic practices into the therapeutic realm. And so like Hakomi somatic exercises were something that was just kind of bread and butter to the daily experience there. And it seemed like in California, it is quite different. And so like at Kaiser Permanente Hospital, getting the psychologists to integrate meditation or yoga practices into their therapy, or to say that you need to be able to offer these modalities to your patients, was a big
Mm.
push, say 10 years ago. And I'm wondering if you think it's a fad, or is it actually a real um, development in psychology today?
I think in the US, it's more than it is here in Europe, but it's starting to develop more and more. But when I started to work in a psychology practice with a few psychologists together, there was still a very cognitive approach. So cognitive therapy was, yeah, that was the mainstream. And when I proposed to also integrate, like, for example, simple yoga exercises or breathing exercises or mindfulness even, they all thought like, no, let's not do that. It's better to stay with the cognitive approach because that's evidence-based, that's proven, that's being researched, blah, blah, blah. And it was, I think it's also, yeah, because it was a new field for them as well. And I think you also have to, yeah, incorporate it yourself. If you're not a practitioner yourself, it's very difficult to teach it to other people, of course, as well. If you don't know about the benefits, and if you've never experienced something like yoga or breath work yourself, I think it's very difficult to teach it to your clients. And I think at that time, and luckily it's really improving, but at that time, a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists were very cognitive based, and
Mm.
yeah, didn't see the benefits yet. But I think because of the whole new development, and especially I think in the US, and for example, Bessel van der Kolk, who has
Yeah.
done a lot of research on trauma, but also talks a lot about the benefits of yoga and in therapeutic processes, which is so important. I think the popularity of it in the therapeutic field is growing.
what is it? The body keeps score. That's the
Yeah.
Vanderkolk.
Yeah.
The body
Yeah.
keeps score. Yeah. It's really, I was thinking about when you took your yoga class and you realized that you were having kind of emotional responses to it, that that something would occur to you, like, well, there's something interesting going on here as a for a therapeutic approach. I think the other thing that came up for me in your bio is that you're a trauma therapist, and it reminded me that so many of the folks there at ITP would say that, well, we suspect that the cognitive approach is actually re-traumatizing, that
Hmm.
retelling the story over and over again of how you were abused is actually maybe damaging to the patient, whereas actually maybe sitting with the breath or doing a simple posture might be better for that person.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And it's actually, it really works that way. So we thought that talking about our experiences and about our trauma would help to to get it away, or to solve it. But
Mhm.
it's the opposite is true. So the more you talk about it, the more the nervous system is being activated again and brings it back into the state as if it is happening again at that moment.
Mhm.
Uh, so all the physical sensations at that moment when you talk about it in the body, it's the same as if the trauma is happening. So
Mhm.
therefore, it's actually really, yeah, re-traumatizing and not beneficial to talk about it all the time, but to leave the story for what it is and more focusing on what's happening right now in the body and
Mhm.
how can you release the actual stored tension and stress out of the body,
Mhm.
because it's all happening on the level of the nervous system, and therefore yoga is such a beautiful tool because it's also working on the level of the nervous system.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that we might be your ideal clients, actually, with that, as far as I noticed also that maybe we share that we have each of us are kind of our own trauma story, kind of the disasters of our childhood that we just gloss over at Christmas these days. Um, did I it sounded like things may have been horrifically bad for you as well. Is that is that right? That's part of your story?
Yeah, that's part of the story indeed. And I like to see it as a story. Um,
Mm.
no, but it's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it was no, it wasn't yeah, the start of my life was not so nice. Yeah, and
You just you described having to take care of your mother, I think you said, as a 4-year-old. And I think that's some maybe a common experience for people who, like I had divorced parents. I'm sort of familiar with that role. And
mhm.
they need someone to take care of them, but you're a
Yeah,
child.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Yeah, and I think and that's the thing with because this is called like developmental trauma, so trauma that's happening in yeah, the development of a child. Um, that makes it very difficult because so there's a difference between like shock trauma, so something that happens like once, like for example, a car accident or um,
Yeah.
uh, a physical, I don't know, injury or something like that, or like more like complex trauma or developmental trauma, so things that are happening over and over and over again. And if it's happening, the earlier it's happening in your childhood, the more difficult it is to deal with it, and
Mhm.
also the symptoms and the remains are much stronger and more extreme.
Mhm.
It's
So yeah.
it's fascinating that way because I think almost it just becomes like you're as sort of an adult in your as you develop, you think that it's just normal. Like you don't really even know that there's any trauma to be
What's that?
healed
It's
at that
just
point.
normal stuff.
And then it can be quite almost um, revolutionary
Revelatory?
revelatory. Thank you.
Both those things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
To kind of recognize like, oh, that wasn't a normal experience for most people. And
Hmm.
I took on a lot as a young child. And I think there's even a lot of work now about, like all the parts and the family systems and family constellations and like bringing yourself back together, which I feel is a very yogic concept as well, right? Like integrating all these parts of ourselves into a whole again.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And also to see it as something good. Because what we usually do is that we judge these different parts, like the protectors,
Yeah.
um, or the survival mechanisms that often in later in life are hampering us, or like are obstacles to, yeah,
Yeah.
to really live life. But they actually helped us to survive and to become the person that we are today, even though that might not be always a good process. But I think it's really important to see, like they say, like all parts are welcome. So all parts they serve, yeah, they have a meaning, and they are here for something, and that something is to protect the self, um, self with a big S. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And I also like tuned into that idea of holding unconscious emotions in our bodies and how through yoga, I mean, that was such a revelatory again experience. Like really not just having the emotion come up, but I had an experience in my yoga practice where like I had, Baddha Konasana, very open hips, and then was in a relationship for about 4 years, and we split up, and I'd been practicing yoga at the time. And then I went to the yoga class, and all of a sudden my hips were super tight. I couldn't do Baddha Konasana at all. And it was just stuck. And I was like, what's going on? This is so weird. And
Hmm.
then I was in a Mysore class. This lasted a couple weeks. And then I was in a Mysore class, and the teacher adjusted me in it and like put my legs to the floor, which they could do prior to this, you know, 2 week experience of them being really tight. And then it was just like all of this emotion came up, like crying and just like, whoa, but not because it felt bad, it was just like emotion. That was it. And um, it really was like such a awakening for me that like, oh my gosh, we really store like trauma, emotions, unconscious things in our bodies, like in a really real way. And that through these practices, we
Yeah,
can we can kind of re-experience the emotion, not even needing to know why it's there or where it came from. But when
exactly.
we can be with it, then it can release and it almost just resolves itself, it seems. Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, with myself, but I also see it with other people.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of these trauma sensitive yoga classes nowadays with people with trauma, and
Mhm.
everybody has trauma in some kind of way. So and actually, I don't know if you know Gabor Mate, I think
Yeah.
because he's from Canada as well, and he actually says that underneath every psychological condition, but also underneath any physical complaint, there is trauma underneath.
Mhm.
So
Mm.
yeah, but
Yeah.
and I think that's also life. I mean, trauma is not like it's not all, because a lot of people think like with trauma, oh, there has to be a war or a rape or something,
Right.
very extreme. But we all have difficult periods in our lives, and we all have moments where things are not going the way we want it to go, and that can be traumatizing already.
Mhm.
So Bessel van der Kolk also says it's not about the event itself, but it's how we deal with it or how other people deal with it. So if there is somebody to take care of you after something bad happens, then the chance that it becomes a trauma is much less than when there's nobody around. And if you have the tools yourself to regulate your nervous system after a bad event, then also the chance that it becomes a big trauma is also less. So yeah, it's all about that. Like, are we able to regulate our nervous system um
And process it, right? Like
yeah,
in the moment. I mean, the moment doesn't have to be while it's happening, but like at some point when we realize like, oh, I'm having a really difficult emotion or difficult memory or experience, can we be with it? And how are we being with it? Are we trying to maybe suppress it, or make ourselves busy so we can just ignore it and try and forget about it, and then we're not really processing it, right? So it kind of sticks to us in a way.
yeah, exactly. And therefore, I think it's so nice to have these yoga practices, and also, for example, the yoga classes that I teach. When people are there, and sometimes I start to cry, and in the moment it really feels very intense. But then after yoga class, they said like, "Oh, I feel better now. It's good. It's gone."
Yeah.
And they walk out of the room, and it's fine. And we don't
Yeah.
have to talk about what really happened in the body, or what memory came up, or whatever. It's just that there is space, there is time, there is, what's very important, I think, is compassion. There is a presence. So for myself, it's really important to be present and to hold a space
Mhm.
for anything that needs to be released, and that
Yeah.
there's no judgment around that too.
That's so interesting. I was just in my head thinking about kinds of and forms of judgment that people put on themselves or put on a culture. They project themselves onto the culture at large and say, "Oh, in my day, this isn't how it was. We shouldn't be doing things this way. We're going to lose sense of our self or our national self by changing the culture." In particular, I was thinking of a particular story about something you just said, um, about people having different reactions to trauma because of maybe the way that the mother may have taken care of them. For example, if a child falls down, I was taught that you should ignore the child because then the child won't think that anything bad happened to them. I remember
Yeah,
being taught that. It's like, oh, if you ignore it, they won't know that anything really bad happened. Don't make a big fuss over it,
yeah,
because then they'll think something really terrible happened to them and they'll freak out. Or you could also just, pick the child up and give them a big cuddle. There's that. You could do that as well. But there's so much projection on what is right or wrong for parenting, for what is right or wrong for us as, Dutch people or American people. Like, this isn't the way that grandma did it. But I wonder if any of that resonates with you.
yeah, yeah, definitely it does. Yeah. And I think, yes, for example, there's this documentary of Gabor Mate. It's called In Utero, and in this documentary, it is said that, like, still in the 50s, it was very normal to, how is it called in English? So when a baby is being operated, like in a medical operation,
Yeah.
they don't give them any anesthesia. Is it that?
Because
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
because
won't
they thought,
remember.
yeah,
Right. I've heard
exactly.
that.
They
Yeah.
thought they won't
But
feel
it's not
anything,
true at
like, and they
all.
won't remember. So can you imagine what happens with a little baby that is not able already to regulate itself and to regulate the nervous system?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I
That's
think,
shocking.
Yeah, I also was circumcised. It's
yeah,
very
yeah,
common and with no anesthetic because it's
yeah,
unthinkable.
yeah.
Mm.
But
And
nowadays,
so,
I think the importance of co-regulation
Mm.
is yeah, it is really becoming more and more important to see that, okay, we know that a baby and a young child is not able to regulate itself. It really needs a healthy nervous system of a caregiver
Yeah.
to become regulated. So it's to
Mhm.
hold the baby or to caress it when it feels sad or angry or whatever. So that's really important. But also as adults, we need that too. And I was
Yeah.
just thinking about that, Harmony, when you were saying what happened in the Mysore class when the teacher was
Yeah.
adjusting it, because that's also co-regulation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, so that there is somebody else to at that moment with
Yeah.
a stable and healthy nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
very close to the other person, and I think that's also the power of Mysore. I really believe in that style of teaching
Yeah.
uh, because it's so physical. And I think because of the physical presence of the teacher, the student is able to open up and to release stored tension in the body, which is not maybe not possible when you are practicing by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's so important. And it's actually something I was thinking of um, talking to you about, which is that co-regulation and also having a teacher who has that, like you're saying, stable nervous system, who's compassionate, empathetic, holding that space in a trauma-informed way, hopefully, right? Where you can where you can truly like be with yourself, with your sensations, with the emotions or whatever is coming up for you, even if nothing's coming up for you in the moment, right? Um, but also, and and every teacher, I think this is why every teacher is quite different because they can't help, and it's kind of the magic of yoga too, is this transmission, right? We talk a lot about transmission in yoga, like who you are gets transmitted in what you're doing in that room in a very unspoken way, right?
Mhm.
You can't kind of like get rid of yourself or the work you've done. And so it's so important to do your work, but it's also like what you're bringing into the room. Um, but also what happens if the room is not like a trauma informed space? What happens if the practice itself becomes traumatizing?
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good question, and I've seen that too.
Yeah, I've experienced it.
Yeah. We were talking about this weekend quite a bit, is that we had a very nice time at a yoga workshop this weekend. We were at the cats, I think they call it Las Gatos, or Las Gatos,
Yeah,
and we
yeah,
we we had a very nice time. Everyone had a very good experience. It wasn't re-traumatizing at all. We were very gentle, but and loving and encouraging and letting people, explore the space and explore how they wanted to come to the practice and do the practice, what works for them individually. But still in the back of our minds, we are sitting there kind of like, well, in the old days, we would just punish these people.
yeah,
We would just break them, and it's like, and that's what happened to us. And I have fond memories of being broken and ripped apart and torn, and very stoic, implacable Mysore yoga teacher telling me exactly, saying nothing, just crushing.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
want to transmit that violence to the next generation. That's very important to me. So it's a struggle because I as much as I'm deeply conflicted because I don't know if being gentle and nice is actually going to transform their transform them.
Hmm.
Mm.
What do you
Yeah.
think?
It's anxiety. It's like,
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm thinking about it.
Why is it up to you to transform someone? I guess that's the
oh
next
yeah,
question. Like, is
that's
it really your job to transform someone?
yeah,
Can you actually transform
yeah,
someone?
that's the authority in the room that I'm missing.
Yeah, like, isn't it the individual's job to transform themselves?
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Mm,
Yeah. Yeah.
mm,
No, but I definitely understand what you're saying. And when I look into my own experience, I think when I started, especially started the Ashtanga practice, I was being taught that way as well. Like
mm.
very strict rules, and if you don't obey the rules, you're not going to the next level. So I was really trying to do my best as hard as I could. But
Yeah.
yeah, but it almost brought me into a burnout because I got up like sometimes at 4 a.m. in the morning before I went to work, and I wanted to do like my whole practice and the pranayama and my meditation and everything. And if I was not able to do it that day, I had a bad day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that made me feel guilty.
Mm.
Guilty towards myself, that I was not a good yoga practitioner, that I should even do even harder my best. And yeah, that at a point I was so tired. Yeah, I was so tired, and I thought like, is this really yoga? Is this what it's all about? Yeah, and that really helped me to take a step back and to practice more in a more compassionate way. But that
Yeah.
doesn't. I think there's a difference in compassion and laziness. I mean, it doesn't
Yeah.
mean
Yeah.
that you have to become lazy or don't challenge yourself anymore, but with respect. I think that's really important. With respect for your own body, for your own process, for your own development, and also the stage or the period or the phase in which you are in.
That's so interesting. That word compassionate, 'cause I've heard that word be used in almost a kind of double talk. Like instead of actually being compassionate, the teacher is being compassionate by breaking you in Baddha Konasana because they understand that you're trapped in a cycle of habitual action, and this will change that
Cycling.
pattern, and you will be broken and freed in Baddha Konasana. And it's like, wow, that's really violent. That's a really violent way of using the word compassionate. And who really cares about Baddha Konasana, really, anyway?
Mm.
How important is it?
But it's
Well,
interesting. I think spiritual communities do that all the time in a certain way, right? They kind of redefine words to justify
Enslavement.
whatever doctrine they're kind of
yeah,
pushing,
Yeah.
I guess.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. That's true, and I think that's very dangerous. And you see it, but you see it in the yoga world as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And therefore, I think it's so important to focus on your own intuition, yourself. That I mean, it's good to have a teacher. I'm not saying that, but it's also good to stay true to yourself and to still feel what's happening in your body, what's happening in an emotional way, um, and also being able to take a step back as well, to zoom out and not to be like really immersed into the practice and nothing else anymore. I've seen that
Yeah.
too, that everything is turning around the yoga practice, and all the other things are not important anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. It's helpful to have another type of job, not just teaching yoga, to keep things in balance, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what happened when you decided to leave your PhD, and then I think you started traveling and going and helping people in all different places and children in
Yeah.
orphanages, and yeah.
You
Yeah, so
adopted a child.
there was a period in between. So there was the PhD, then I started to work in a psychology practice. And then I started to realize that I wanted to combine like my therapeutic skills also with yoga. But there was no space in that practice to do that. So I thought, okay, so then I'm going to do it by myself. So I set up my own practice at that time. I think I was 28 or something, because I really believed in this. I really believed in the holistic approach. That it's not only about the cognition, it's not about the thoughts. It's about how to incorporate these things as well, and to to use the body as a tool too, because like especially with trauma, everything is being stored in the body. There are memories, of course, in the mind, but a lot of the tension is in the body. So that's also the place where you need to address it. So yeah, I started to do that, and I did that for a few years, and from the beginning on, it was actually quite successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was a bit surprised as well, because I thought, yeah, that's quite a big step to do that just by myself. But I had such a strong belief, like this is where I stand for, and I believe that this is important, and that's the thing that I want to bring into the world. I really felt it as a life goal or something. Yeah.
Yeah. You were like a pioneering force in mind body integration and therapy and the Netherlands.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then I did a lot of trainings in trauma therapy. So I did the somatic experiencing from Peter Levine, the norm, which is the developmental trauma training, body dynamic, that's also about like how the tension and stress is being stored in different parts of the body. And of course, a lot of yoga trainings too.
Yeah.
You were
And
talking
then,
about Peter Levine this weekend.
Yeah.
We found one
yeah,
of his books in the
oh,
yoga
nice.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The tiger
Great
one.
tiger.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. I really love that approach because it's very gentle, it's very subtle, and it combines again. I mean, I'm not saying that the mind is a bad thing, not at all, but it's good to combine both things.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and then I went for a training to Thailand, to Samahita.
Yeah.
So I went there a few times for my 500 hours teacher training. And I was in a meditation. We were doing the pranavajapa,
Yeah.
but I think for an hour or something,
Oh,
very long.
wow.
Yeah. And so I was sitting in that meditation, and I was chanting Om. And then at a point, I saw myself working in an orphanage. And at that time, I was already a Gives Back ambassador, but
Yeah.
just doing activities in the Netherlands. And I saw myself working in an orphanage, and I thought, oh yeah, but that's what I always wanted to do when I was a child. I wanted to set up my own orphanage.
Wow.
Yeah, probably because I had a bad childhood myself, and I wanted to take care of all the
Yeah.
children that are having
Mhm.
a
You
bad
wanted
child.
to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's-
Yeah, no,
mm.
yeah. But anyway, so I thought like, well, yeah, that's something that I always wanted to do. So and at that moment I was in a relationship. We were about to get married.
Yeah.
We were about to buy a house. So a lot of things that were focusing on like settling and attaching myself to something. Um, and this idea came up, and I thought I really need to do this. So I said that to my boyfriend, and he said, "Are you crazy? we're having all these plans, and now you want to do this is yeah." I'm not going into that. Okay, but it felt so strong that I wanted to do that. So I contacted Kayoko, and I said, yeah, would it be an idea if I could go to Dina Bandhu and to stay there for a few months and to do some voluntary work? And yeah, and she said, oh, great, of course. Yeah, you can do that. And I will bring you in touch with the owner. And
Yeah.
yeah. And then from then, so that was in July, I think. And from then it went really fast. And in September, I was in the airplane towards India.
Wow.
Yeah. I gave up my apartment. I gave up my relationship. I gave up all my belongings. So I had this garage sale that people come into your house, and
Yeah.
they
Take
pick.
everything.
Yeah.
Pay what you can.
Exactly. So when it in the morning when they came, the first ones that came, I was a bit scared. I thought, oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing? But then at the end of the day, I remember that sense of liberation. I felt so free. I thought I don't have anything anymore, but everything is inside of me, and that feels so rich. Uh,
Yeah.
that I don't need anything else. I don't need all these material things. I don't need all these belongings. I have myself, and that's enough. Yeah. So yeah, that
That's
was quite powerful.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's incredible. What an experience.
Yeah, in the process of non-attachment,
Yeah.
that was a very good experience. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so
And
then you
then
got on a plane and ended up in India near Mysore, right?
yeah, it's near Mysore. It's
Hmm.
about 70 kilometers from Mysore. Yeah, but it's really like in the middle of nowhere, and that was 10 years ago. So and you will see when we get there in February, it's much more developed nowadays. But at
Yeah.
that time, yeah, it was really yeah. There was nothing. I mean, there was not even like a shop where you could buy some stuff. It was just like really in the middle of nowhere,
Wow.
but really nice, and it really brought me a lot of beautiful experiences to work with these children, and also the owner. He's a very special person. He is very spiritual and yeah, very nice and kind person. And I think especially for Indian people, he's yeah, he's different. Because if
Yeah.
you go to like regular orphanages in India, it's very strict. It's a very hard regime. But he
Mhm.
is really focusing again on compassion and the development of the children, and that they get good education and good
Nice.
moral values as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And how long were you there again?
So I was there for around I think 8 months in total at that time.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I set up a fundraiser, did a lot of yeah, fundraising for them as well. So all the things that I like, for example, that I sold at from my apartment and things that this it all went to the fundraiser. Um, yeah, and that was also very nice because so many people were supporting this.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Amazing.
Yeah, so people not only with money but also with activities. So there was, for example, a yoga student of mine who was a very good singer-songwriter. So she organized a concert, and all the donations also went to the orphanage. Or somebody else who was very creative started to make very nice bracelets and necklaces and sold these things. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
That's
That's really
amazing. That's
yeah,
so wonderful to just have like also this vision that you had,
yeah.
chanting Om, like created this entire vortex of people coming together and
Yeah,
raising funds to donate to these children in this orphanage.
yeah,
Absolutely amazing.
yeah,
it's a real pranic opening.
yeah,
Something happened.
definitely.
Yeah.
And also then I started to realize again like the power of yoga and for example the pranavajapa, which is said that it brings you closer to your soul,
Yeah.
to the essence of your being and why you are here in on this earth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Hmm.
thought, okay, so that's also really true. So it works.
It works. Amazing.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then but you're not there now. You're back in the world now, and you have a practice. You must have
Yeah.
felt conflicted about coming back.
Yeah, so after India, I went to Cambodia. So I didn't want to go back, of course. But also,
I'm free finally.
So I started to work there in Phnom Penh in a yoga NGO actually. So the
Oh,
NGO
wow.
was about to teach local people the practice of yoga so that they could become teachers and that the local teachers could teach the traumatized women and children the tools of yoga which could help them to overcome their traumas, which
Wow.
is very, yeah, lovely concept, of course, but the practical practical things of the organization were not so well organized. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a bit different than I expected. So I stayed there for again like 6 months or something. And then I went again to Samahita for another teacher training. And then I stayed there.
Yeah.
So I was supposed to go there for 4 weeks, and I stayed almost 4 years.
Whoa.
Yeah, a long time. I remember Shri Opi Tewari was saying, "Oh, Anouk is managing the center now." I was like, "Okay,
Wow.
that's so nice."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I
4 years.
was not for the whole time at Samahita. So I stayed there, I think, working there and practicing there for maybe 2 years, 2.5 years. But I also worked in a rehab clinic on the island and also in
Mm,
Kamalaya. I think you
mhm.
know Kamalaya too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which was also very interesting to see all these yeah wealthy people coming from all over the world.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then I was still going to India back and forth. So yeah, it was a
Yeah,
beautiful
that's a nice trip, like a 5-hour plane ride.
time. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, easy
Yeah, but
journey.
yeah, then coming back to your question. So yeah, after these years in Thailand, I came into at a point that I really had to make a decision, like either I stay here or I go back because I was still involved in teacher trainings in the Netherlands. So I had to fly like 3-4 times a year back to the Netherlands to teach there. And I could not combine it anymore together. So I had to make a decision. And then I thought, okay, I'm here for such a long time now, and the island is not so big. So after a few years, you have seen every inch of the island.
Yeah.
Thought like, okay, maybe it's better to go back.
Mhm.
But then when I came back, I thought it's because all the other transitions went very easily. So I never had any problems to adapt to a new situation or whatever. But coming back and adapting myself again into my own old culture and environment, I think that was the most difficult thing. Yeah, yeah. It really took me a few months to really to feel again a sense of home because it was completely different. Yeah,
Mm.
I was changed, of course, but and the situation was still the same. But I started to notice, all the things that maybe before were not so visible for me, but now it became very clear, like the
Mhm.
rules, the way the people are dealing with each other, the cold. Yeah,
The cold. Yeah.
but not like your cold, but still.
Yeah, it's still cool.
Yeah, it is
Mm.
interesting though. I think that transition when you live overseas, and we both lived overseas for,
Decades.
well, not decades, but
I have a
a
yeah.
good period of time,
I was
especially in Asia, because it's so different culturally, environmentally, it's just a greater sense of freedom in a way. I think when you're also really outside of your culture and kind of implanted into another culture, you don't really have to follow their rules because
Mm.
you're not part of the culture. So there is sort of this really vast sense of
you
freedom.
don't have to get married or join the military or whatever they do.
Yeah, or even just like you don't have to follow etiquette, right? That they have to follow because
They'll be
it's their culture and
stopped.
they know what the rules are, right? And so they kind of give you a permission card to kind of not follow anything, any kind of decorum or etiquette or, societal hierarchies. And then when you come back, you don't have that same like pass because now you're back in your culture. And but also, like you said, there's a real sense of freedom still and difference, and like how much you've changed, and yet cultures and places have a way of kind of staying the same. It's so hard sometimes, I think, to really also a lot of like what we left comes back in a way, right? Like emotionally, you
Oh, yeah,
leave
yeah.
and you get to like separate from all of that past, and you're just like free and in the new place. And then you go back to the place, where you grew up, or
You're right back wrapped into the childhood patterns that you have.
yeah, all that stuff comes back. And then you're like reprocessing a lot of stuff, that because with fresh eyes, of course, which is lovely, but also very challenging, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. And I was not so aware of that myself. No.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think until you go through it, you don't really know it's going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So then it's like you're trying to reintegrate into the culture, but then also you're kind of like reintegrating into your life and into a sense of self
Yeah,
again.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
true. Yeah, very
Yeah.
true.
It's complicated.
I was surprised by you know like little things that happened when I came back that were because I was away 10 years at in different there's India or Korea or England, it was away from home for 10 years, and coming back there was just little things that surprise you, like whether or not it's like the people using phones, which they didn't when I left, or that people were selling yoga mats in the stores, um, or that people were at all interested in health food, in the majority culture. Like the culture shock was happened in reverse as well. It's like this is like getting out of prison,
Yeah.
and then like, oh, this is everyone's doing this now. you
Hmm.
know it's you could turn the car on with a button instead of a key. Like that's things are like, well, this is taking some getting used to.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
What was the most challenging thing for you to um like get used to or integrate, like when you came back?
Yeah, I think that I think in Canada it's the same, but we have a lot of rules here, like taxes,
Mm,
insurance, but also rules in how to behave and what's normal and what isn't.
mm-hmm,
So that sense of freedom, yeah, that was so you're very much put into, everything is put into boxes, and this should go like this and this should go like that. And yeah, and I think in Asia, or yeah, in India as well, I mean, it's totally different, but yeah, there is a sense of freedom, and that you can,
mm-hmm,
that some things are really not that important, whereas here people make such a big deal out of it.
mm-hmm,
I think that was something that really struck me, and also, like I said, the way people are dealing with each other, so that there is, yeah, not so much connection. The very individualistic. People are very lonely, isolated. Yeah, and then not long after that, the whole pandemic came, so
Hmm.
right.
it made it even worse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And you must have like had to reestablish your practice then and kind of start everything brand new.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so like the first time, so also now the second time that went really well, because
Good.
yeah, yeah, there's
There's always
always
people in need.
exactly, there's always enough work to do. And yeah, yeah. So like I said, I really believe in what I'm doing. So I don't see, I don't have any fear or anxiety or something around that, or concerns that it would not work or that it would not work out or whatever. No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And so what are you up to these days? What's going on? Are you have one more question?
One more
Okay.
question that I want to know, and maybe this relates to what you just asked, and is what things that she's into. I would like to know more about this yoga of 12-step recovery, the
Oh,
trauma
I
sensitive
know
yoga.
this
Is
one.
that what you're doing now?
In the sense of yoga?
Or
Yeah.
your work? Yeah.
Yeah, no, so my work, so I work, so yeah, my work is actually, so I'm seeing private clients, so individual people, so one-to-one sessions, where I use different tools, and this also different for every person. So,
Mhm.
for example, when somebody comes with, I don't know, depression, we can do some breath work. We can do some breathing exercises that will help to activate the nervous system a little bit more, but also see where the depression actually is coming from and what's the trauma underneath, and work on that, but also like on a physical level to see where is it stored in the body. So that's what I'm doing, like with private clients. And then I have 2 times per week, I have this trauma sensitive yoga class that I'm teaching, which is open to clients, but also to just people that are interested. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm teaching workshops and trainings as well in the sense of, or in the field of trauma healing. And nowadays, I'm also being more and more asked to do like podcasts or webinars. Or next week, I'm going to Amsterdam. We have a magazine here which is called Psychology Magazine, and they want to offer a training which is focused on body-oriented therapy. And I have to record some videos and to show some practical tools that people can use to regulate their nervous system.
Mhm.
So it's yeah, it's very various. So, and I really like that. So the different things that I'm doing, it's not always every day the same, and
Yeah.
people are also always different. So that helps too. Um, yeah, but yeah, that's more or less what I'm doing nowadays. Yeah, and then yeah, also being a Yoga Gives Back ambassador, and especially with our upcoming visit in February.
You both are going to India like next
Yeah.
week.
2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah,
I think it's almost closer to 1 week.
Maybe.
Week and a half. It's coming.
it's yeah, I think for me it's like 2 weeks. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
2 weeks from today, because today's Thursday and I'm flying on a Thursday. Yeah.
You're flying on a Tuesday. Okay.
Takes a little longer to get
Yeah.
there from here.
So what are you two doing over there? No one's really talked to me about what's going
Yeah,
on.
what are we doing
I'm
over
just
there?
taking care of the dogs, I was told.
Well, you've been several times on the Saba trip with Yoga Gives Back.
Yeah.
So is
Yeah.
this your 4th time with them?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fourth.
Okay.
Yeah. Or
So what are
maybe.
we doing, Anouk? What are we gonna do in
Yeah.
India?
Surprise. No, it's like a full pack program. Yeah, so we're going to visit the projects. So the orphanage in Karnataka, in Chamarajanagar, and the other project is in West Bengal. So that's the project where we support, like, I think 250 women, and then also I don't know how many hundred young girls with microcredits.
Yeah.
So for the women,
Oh,
so that
microcredits,
yeah,
microloans. Yeah,
yeah,
okay. Wow.
yeah, microloans, and they can set up their own businesses, and with the money that they earn, they can pay for the education of the children, which is really powerful, especially in
Wow.
that area. You will see, yeah, it's very impactful.
Yeah.
Incredible.
We're going to visit these projects, and we're going to talk with the women, with the students, with the orphans, to get an idea of where they are using the donations for and how it is helping them, which is really nice to see how we can be so impactful, but especially also for the people that are joining, why it is so important to raise these funds.
Yeah.
And what is being done with it, and to see that with your own eyes it's I think it's really it's really helping, because you can also explain it when you go back to your own country to see to tell that it's really going to a good place, and that it's really contributing to the development of all these children and women.
Yeah, so inspiring and motivating to go and meet the people that are receiving the benefit of all the fundraising that we do through Yoga Gives Back. And then also like connect with them and see like also what else they need, right? Or, where we can be more helpful, or like to just be in relationship and conversation, and also be in India with the real human beings in their communities and places where they live, and to live with them. In the case of the orphanage, that's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and I think we also get to teach some yoga to the orphans, because they really
I'm sure.
yogasana, as they call it. Yeah.
Yoga asanas. I know. I love how in India they always specify
Mhm.
what it is, because like yoga asana isn't just, it's not yoga, it's yoga asana.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important. I think we need to do more of this in North America, because it really like lets you know. Yeah, it lets you know, oh, this is one part of something much bigger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to confuse it with that scheduling app, Asana, either.
Yeah, the scheduling
Also
app.
very useful.
Also.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us. I know that you, you you may not want to answer so many personal questions, but it's very wonderful to hear your story, and to hear your work, and to hear how these frontiers that we've explored, these technologies that we're bringing back with us are finding root here in our homes. So thank you for that work.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And thank you so much to have this opportunity to at least to connect with you and to share. And I think I feel that it resonates, and that we are on the same page, on the same line. I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's beautiful to see how you've brought in these Eastern teachings and practices that you've been studying for so long, and then bringing them into the psychology world to help people who wouldn't really, or maybe even have an interest in learning, pranayama or yoga or anything, right? But it can be so therapeutically helpful in all the ways that we just spoke about. So
Exactly. And I sometimes even don't mention the word yoga, because for some people it's still like a total different world, but I call it like stress management tools or something like that. But in fact, it's just pranayama, or it's just yogasana, but under a different name.
I know. It's like breath work people are okay with, but pranayama is like scary.
Yeah, exactly.
And like MBSR.
Yeah, whereas Goenkaji's Burmese Buddhism
Vipassana
is not as helpful as MBMSR.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have to kind of rename things in a more sciencey way, I guess.
Yeah.
In a relatable way.
Relatable way.
It's about making
relate. True. I think that's important. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Anouk. It's so nice to connect with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Isn't it just incredible how our body stores past memories and emotions and trauma within it? I think it's such a powerful, powerful practice to really slow down and notice where you might be slightly contracted or holding tension in the body, and tune in to what emotions or thoughts or words or memories come up, and then feeling into what's there and learning to work through those old stored emotions or patterns, to release them, to process them, to let go, to really transform ourselves and our lives. This is all a part of the somatic coaching that I love to do with my clients. And I loved just tapping into the essence of this here with Anouk in the conversation today. So I hope you also learned something and took something away with you about listening a little more deeply to what your body's trying to tell you. The body is really the door to the unconscious mind. So I think that it's really worth slowing down and giving it a few minutes, maybe a few hours in your day, depending on how much time you have, to tune in and listen and be with all of those sensations. If you would like to work more intimately with me in a deeper way, then I would invite you to sign up for this 4-day retreat I'm teaching at Nåsen Mountain Lodge in Norway. I will be teaching there May 30th to June 3rd. It's a retreat called Unlayering, using yoga as a tool for spiritual wellness to increase your energy and fulfillment. And we're going to use all of the somatic practices we have to help release and let go of the patterns, the thoughts, and the beliefs, and maybe even the habits that are no longer serving you as a practitioner, and step into a whole new way of embodying yoga within your life. So this is a really beautiful time of connecting and exploring nature in a setting where you can go within and find silence and stillness and solitude, but then also really revitalize your inner well-being, your energy, to step into a whole new chapter in your life. I'm excited for this retreat. It's all inclusive. You can find the link in the show notes, and I hope you'll join me May 30th to June 3rd at Nåsen Retreat Center. I look forward to meeting you there. That's it. We've concluded another episode of the Finding Harmony podcast. I just want to thank you so much for doing the work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a huge difference. Please make sure you have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much more magic I can't wait to share with you. Lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello at Finding Harmony Podcast. And you can also come say hello to me personally at Harmony Slater Official. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you in our next episode.